How much do we really know about human potential? As we've entered a new medical era where we have the ability to take out many diseases, map the entirety of the human genome, and potentially even more importantly, scholars would maintain the most important thing, you have some random dude on YouTube tell you about biology, it seems our understanding of the human form and its limitations as well as its strengths become more known by the hour. I mean, look at science-based lifters for information. Good lord, just lift heavy weight, voice and head go quiet. Although objectively speaking, Jeff Nipper does have some great information on lifts. But as we have learned about our meat suits, it seems the ideas of old to explain certain events have kind of fallen by the wayside as just a superstition or a myth. But what's interesting is, why have these ideas across completely different cultures sprung up in the first place? Could it be that it was just a way to scare younglings from entering the woods, or is there something hidden within humanity that may only come out at certain times? In the events of Blood Moon, this line of thinking is shown with an ancient enemy of the Navajo, the Skinwalkers, which were also other Navajo. Of course, part of their issue is when we look at this thing, it doesn't really look much like an animal that we know, but something else entirely. Then you have thrown in the issue of maybe hybrids and it starts getting a little more out there. So, what is this creature? Where did it come from specifically? What is the hybrid? And why has humanity always believed that these things existed? Well, let's discuss that in today's episode over Blood Moon. But before moving on, I want to thank you guys for watching. Without you, I am totally screwed. I have memberships and I will start live streaming on this channel soon as I get back from my cruise. The reason is that it separates the algorithm out from like my live streams so it doesn't screw with my main content to do so. If you want to check that out, super cool of you. If you don't, I wouldn't sweat it. Check out Roanoke Tales channel for cryptids and true crime stuff. Also, I'm streaming over on Twitch under Roanoke Games. Keep an eye on the Discord for movies. Yes, I do have a Discord. You should check that out. We watch them and then they end up here. Links for everything in the description. So we kick off our story today with vision that's blurry. I mean, my vision isn't, but yours sucks. Also, this is our Lord and Savior Uncorked Entertainment, and my God, do they make some classics. Like, I'm not even busting balls. I really do like their movies and have grown to love this production company. As a man points a handheld at his horse, he then fires a shot into it, taking it out on the spot. He puts it away with a flare, like a flourish or a flare, I guess, and then he finds somewhere to go bed down for the night as we see Blood Moon. Later that night, we head down to Pine Flats, Colorado. I'm not gonna lie, the Old West must have been just hot and boring most of the time. A man then sits down to eat as he hears howling outside. In this case, also, that's pretty horrifying. He is literally the last dude in town. Why would you stay there? Lock and loading, Brides of Christ. He then hears something way worse than coyotes, evidently again, being the only person in town. He starts hearing his horse freaking out down the way as then he goes to check on that. The horse is scared. Finding a rat, he assumes it to just be that, and seeing that the horses are fine, someone is going absolutely ham with a fog machine as he goes outside. Checking the creepiest alley in the abandoned ghost town leading to the haunted forest of doom, he then looks out and spots something literally in front of him as he has just enough time to get out Jesus H, which is Jesus' middle name of course being Henry, before getting his throat slashed. Meanwhile, over at Leonard Washington's camp, he hears howling as well, but decides to just go back to bed. Over at Lassiter, Colorado, a bank robbery is underway as one guy gets shot in the hand immediately. Ouchies. Oh, and here comes another one around the corner, but he forgets to load up his revolver first, or maybe it jams, I'm not sure which, but he gets straight up domed immediately with the sheriff coming out, taking a pot shot at the robbers. Well, that's the end of his story career as a bank teller, I guess. So the doctor shows up, as they deduce it was Jeb Norton. If they are headed north, then there's a good chance that they'll actually run into the carriage near Palm Flats to get some more horses, which means they're running straight into the new sheriff. Over at the carriage, a couple just got married. Yo, hold up. Is that an 1867 four-wheel spoke spinster carriage edition? These are pretty rare. Yo, dude who hates me talking about cars in the episode, check this out, bro. These bad boys could carry at minimum 7 people if someone sits on the floor, and they get a commanding 2 horsepower. Let's just say if you were going with the 1866 version, you can only carry 5 people, and going from Denver to Lassiter would take you 23 hours instead of 22 in the objectively speaking cherry 67 version as opposed to the 66. Not to mention, peep the hand-sewn trim on these pillows and functional windows, but they're kind of covered up. That's quality, brother. They just don't make them like they used to anymore. Anyhow, so Jake is the new sheriff in town, and the woman is Mrs. Jake Norman, allegedly known as Sarah. A widow named Marie runs the saloon, as another man named Henry Lester is there to write an article on the Old West, which would be the current West, and he's English, so there's that. So it's all pleasantries and talking about where you're from. I mean, what else are you gonna do on a 22-hour carriage ride through the woods? Carriage, of course, being long for car. That's where it comes from. Certainly not open up the windows and let the stank out of there that you've been stuck breathing in with everyone else, because deodorant doesn't exist yet. That would be crazy. As they continued their journey, Leonard Washington has left his his camp, as then he stops the carriage. He pulls out the old revolver and fires a shot, getting them to kind of cease their driving, I guess. Leonard then says he'd like to board their carriage if there is room. Hell of a way to do it, brother. They're headed to Pine Flats to get some fresh horses, and when they get there, they're then headed to Denver after. Leonard then pays them as he boards the carriage. Everyone holsters their handhelds except for the widow, as Jake asks where he's from, and he says a little town called None of Your GD Business. I know. You're not supposed to say that, apparently. So they kept going towards Pine Flats as a reward is now being offered for the Norton brothers' capture. Over at a store of sorts, a woman then plays cards against a man who cheats at cards, and he leaves calling her a witch before acting a fool. The marshal and Blackdeer then discuss tracking down the Norton brothers. Blackdeer then tells him about a dream vision she had that the night prior involved a creature that kills in the blood moon. He said it. She suggests it's a skinwalker of sorts instead of a werewolf, which when you see this thing, I don't really know if there's a difference between a skinwalker and a werewolf, or if somebody just didn't know what the difference was. She then tells him to delay his search for a few days, as he says, nuh-uh, he's just gonna head out anyways. Blackdeer then asks if he has any silver bullets, as he says he can't afford that on Guberman's salary. So she says, just making sure, as then she nopes out of there to go get ready. Pulling into Pine Flats, the carriage has arrived. They're stopping there for a few hours to rest and get some new horses before continuing on. As they step out into the abandoned town, well, this place looks like crap, but you're gonna be there for at least a few hours. It also occurred to me that everyone was probably hammered in the carriage, as is custom, so that's pretty much how you pass the time. The silver mine had to shut down, so then that pretty much left one person there to maintain the livery and the saloon. Leonard Washington makes a pass at the widow as everyone then heads into the saloon, calling out for Charlie. The problem is, Charlie is most definitely puppy chow at this point. Seeing absolutely nobody there, someone then suggests maybe he's out back. They're the Skinwalker. Jake and Leonard and the carriage driver then head out back, as Leonard tells everyone to kind of spread out and look for anything in the edgiest way place, like, all right, everyone, let's spread out. So Leonard is the first to find the owner. It's Charlie, at least what's left of him. Jake then asks what in God's name did that, as Leonard says the liver has been torn out, as then they find hairs left over. Leonard then asks if Jake is familiar with the Native American legends, but he also adds, had to have been a wolf pack to do that. Checking his force multiplier on the ground a few feet away from him, nothing was ever fired, so whatever came at him fast. Cougar maybe? And not even the fun cougars, but the ones that are you know what? That doesn't clear anything up. They're all dangerous. Moving on, back inside, nobody says anything. The preacher asks if it was an accident, as they suggest maybe it was a wolf pack of sorts. Yes, of sorts. Heading outside to bury Charlie, they then dig a hole as the preacher says a few words for him. But as the preacher begins, he stops as he thought he saw something standing by a tree. Ignoring that, despite this dude literally being torn to shreds, he continues on giving the eulogy for a man he didn't know. Granted, I guess that is in the job description if you think about it. Mid-sentence though, he gets domed. Well, I guess you just got a one-way ticket upstairs, as everyone then starts firing in all directions at whoever is attacking. Henry starts writing about the predicament as the Norton brothers say that they have them caught in a crossfire and to lower their revolvers. Leonard then holsters his handheld as everyone then puts their hands up. Jeb grabs Henry as Hank then shows up talking about who they are. Leonard Washington says they are known to shoot innocent people, as in they take his revolver. Raising his own revolver at him, they say they're gonna take him out for his smart mouth. He says, you're gonna have to shoot me if you want this revolver, as they say okay and then shoot him in the leg. That was artistic liberty. They don't actually do that. You've been misled. Telling everyone to get inside, they then enter the saloon, as now it's just a happening hangout spot, I guess, or a hot spot, whatever. Pulling the handheld on Jake's new wife, Jeb then makes out with her as he pulls back his coat and sees that he's a lawman. Jeb then goes to hand Jake the revolver, as Leonard says, why not give him the revolver? Henry says these revolvers are getting rather heavy because he was tasked with holding them, as then he heads outside to go hide them. They ask whose funeral that was anyways, as Leonard says the owner was killed by something, but they don't know what it was. Marie then chimes in, saying Hank smells like a horse's ass, as these two appear to have a marginal grip on the group. This is one of the most unhinged kidnappings I've ever seen. So Jake's wife starts coughing, infecting everybody with tuberculosis, as Jeb then takes both the handhelds. Hank then heads outside, hearing the horses start neighing, as then he looks up and the full blood moon has risen. Now you may be curious as to what a blood moon actually is. When this video comes out, we will have actually had one last week, I believe on the 13th through the 14th. A blood moon is a lunar eclipse. This is when the Earth is in front of the sun and the moon passes directly behind it. Any light that gets to the moon will be filtered through Earth's thick atmosphere, giving it a reddish hue. This turns the moon blood red, and it looks really interesting and probably was terrifying for people back in the day who didn't know what was going on with it. Back to the movie. Leonard then tells Jeb whatever killed the owner is probably watching them as they speak, and it has a taste for human flesh. Hank says he doesn't see anything once he gets back inside, as he tells Jeb to go out back and check to see if the owner kept any more handhelds stocked away. Or, I don't know, just send Lester to go back out there and get the ones you had him hide. Just a thought, you know? So Marie then finds some rope as she ties up Leonard. Hank then sends Sarah to go get some food together before they leave, you know, in the back of the saloon out of eyesight of everyone with a creature on the loose. Jeb then asks Hank what he saw out there. He says forget it, as Hank asks where Marie learned to tie a knot like that. Back over at Lassiter, Blackdeer goes to Marshall's office and tells him that they really should probably bring some silver bullets with them when they head out. She had another vision where both of them were under the blood moon and death was upon them. She warns him that is basically going to be both of them, but he ain't listening. Reaffirming his position on they both head out. Look, all I'm saying is if the person who's helping you track down a duo known to murder and she's saying, hey, we probably need some silver bullets, I'm probably going to listen and at least find something. Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. Or better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. Bring a silver knife at least. Back over at Pine Flats, it's all coffee and being tied up. Sounds like a party, but it's actually not. Hank then tells Henry to go fill the water bucket outside and come back. And if he comes back with anything in his hands besides the bucket, he's a dead man. Hank then sits down and asks Leonard if he's ever been to Wichita. They say he looks like a man who's really good at dueling, the fastest gunslinger in the West, some would claim actually. Jeb asks how fast is he really? Leonard tells him, well, untie me, hand me my revolver, and I'll show you how fast I am actually. But being as he's tied up at the moment, again, it makes it impossible for Jeb to really ever know. Henry then comes back and almost gets taken out, classic Henry moment. Meanwhile, way out there in the middle of nowhere, riding through the woods, Blackdeer and Marshall stop as Blackdeer says horses came through about 3 hours ago. The Marshal asks if she's okay, as she's a little dizzy and shaky on her feet. She says she caught a rabbit for breakfast, killed it, skinned it, and ate it. The Marshal says, well, you left out cooking. She's like, oh, did I? Okay, that's not weird. Also, that's the problem with rabbit and alcohol. Let's discuss. So your diet, you need several different food sources in order to stay alive because you need fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Despite what is said, your brain needs carbohydrates to function. The keto diet is cool and all, but you need it. So, not keto, but carbohydrates. And while it can run off ketones during a fasted state, this is less than ideal, and eventually having ketones as the primary fuel source for your body can lead to ketoacidosis, which is actually what Tiny Tim had in A Christmas Carol. The problem with eating only rabbits is it leads to a fairly strange illness known as rabbit starvation, and this form of malnutrition stems from the fact that rabbits have a high amount of protein in the body, but very little fat or carbohydrates. As a result, if the only food around is rabbit and you are in a state of starvation, you're probably going to eat whatever you can catch. While rabbit will fill your stomach and stave off the actual hunger pangs, your body will start turning to fat to consume it, as you will only be getting mostly protein, and in some cases, too much protein, which can actually lead to protein poisoning. Your body is hilarious with this. So you will begin to become skinnier and skinnier as symptoms of fatigue and nausea begin to set in. Eventually, diarrhea will hit and death will come several weeks later. Now, it's doubtful Blackdeer is suffering from rabbit starvation, but if that's all she's eating and she drinks a lot, which it's kind of alleged that she is in the actual movie, you need something a little more to kind of make up for the lost nutrition, I guess you could say. So this could lead to that. So if you're ever in a situation like this, you need to find some plants to eat as well, if it's possible. And if at all, again, possible, find a fattier meat to consume. Rabbits will keep you alive for a little while, however, but you need to supplement when you get back to civilization. So as the woman in the back cook, and or women, I'm not really sure why I singulared that, Jake's wife hides a knife inside of her sleeve. Hank then comes back there to threaten them, as he hasn't done that in over 3 minutes, as they hear howling in the distance once more. Everyone lock and loading Brides of Christ to get ready for whatever that is. I mean, if it was a wolf pack, just shut the doors. No need to worry so much about that. Though Leonard's statement has put everyone on edge as far as what it could be. They ask if Leonard really thinks that killed the owner, as he finally spills the spaghetti out of his pocket, saying, it's a Skinwalker. Hank then says he's crazy, which then causes Leonard to respond saying, well, why don't you go outside and prove me wrong? Jake keeps talking about the Skinwalkers, that scares Jeb, and he says he heard of a story where it took 7 Navajo braves to actually take it out, and when they cut it open, they found 5 outlaws eaten by them. So before moving on, because it's actually going to highlight a bit of strangeness with this, I guess you could say, what exactly is a skinwalker? Well, I'm glad you asked. Skinwalkers are not werewolves. See, there's this mix-up, I guess you could call it, but we'll kind of see it later. But skinwalkers, according to Navajo lore, are incredibly difficult to kill humans who are sorcerers of sorts. Most of the time, the only way to actually take this thing out, or is said that you could kill them, is by using special spells or rituals that have to be performed by a shaman. But even with that, there are other ideas on how to end them also. Sometimes it's said force multiplication can have an effect on them, but it'll never truly take them out. Others say it does absolutely nothing. However, it is generally agreed upon that utilizing bullets dipped in white ash or a silver bullet hitting them in the head or neck region can end the problem permanently. Some more strange ways is if you say their real name, it will force them to transform back into human. And if you can get them to talk in their animal form, that will trap them permanently in that form, but make them vulnerable to attack. Even other ideas say that if you could trap them somehow and they're reported on, the media literally reports on these things, within a year the skinwalker will die. No idea where that one comes from. But all in all, these people are able to transform into any animal they like and then take on the strengths associated with that form and leave their human weaknesses behind. They appear to be mostly reviled in Navajo culture, and even talking about them is said to attract their attention or bring bad luck, which that does not bode well for me in this video. But when we see these things, they do not appear to be what's described as an actual skinwalker from Navajo legends. Instead, it appears there may have been some bleed over with another mythical beast from legends in Europe. So Leonard keeps talking as Hank then threatens him as the women come back in with food. Hank says if he comes back tall, dark, and hairy, shoot him because it's not him. All right then, brother. I didn't really think we needed the explanation, as nobody would assume that was you in the first place. So heading out back, he approaches the graveside of the owner, as then he looks out into the woods. Also, where's the body of the priest? As Hank then looks around, something is watching him. Hearing a knock on the door, Hank wants to be let back in, as Sarah still has a knife hidden in her sleeve. Hank then tells Jeb that they need to get out of there, and the body out back is gone. Taking some water over to Jake, Marie then starts asking where the Norton brothers are going. They're probably not going to tell you. As Sarah then hands the knife to Jake, Jake then hands the knife to Leonard, Leonard then hands the knife to the rope, as Marie steps in as Hank and Jeb are arguing over Sarah for specific reasons. Right, bodies going missing out back, everyone talking about skinwalkers, you've seen the thing, let's just go ahead and worry about who's getting laid at this specific point in time. She then says what she's got is as good as a girl who's 21. All right then, Marie. Jeb then tells Sarah to go sit down, as Hank tells Henry to go outside and get the handhelds and then bring them back in. Marie keeps them focused, as then she turns towards Jeb, talking to him to let his guard down or make him let his guard down. Absolutely hardcore style, she just straight up domes Jeb on the spot. Nice job. Before Hank can even react to that, realizing that his half-brother is now dead, they throw a knife into his arm, disabling it. The enemy cannot use their hand to fire if you disable it. Approaching him with malicious intent, they then knock him out. Hearing a knock on the door, Henry is outside, and as they open the door, they find Henry has been sliced across the abdomen and has probably already bled out at this point. Of course, when I say sliced across the abdomen, what I actually mean is he's been entirely bisected with one swipe. The benefit of that is, as soon as that slices through the abdominal aorta, you would bleed out within 1 minute. And with that also having severed the spinal cord, this would prevent blood vessels from even constricting at the behest of the nerves, meaning vasodilation would take place, resulting in Henry going into complete shock. So basically, as that happened, the conscious part of him completely loses control of the body. Fly high, King. Focused in on him, and because it's really dark, something then starts dragging him, which I have no idea how they missed that at all. It was standing right there as it grabbed his legs. So I guess Henry ain't going back to England to write that hit piece on the Old West, I reckon. So back inside, Sarah and Jake hear something on the roof as they realize the skinwalker is real. And I heavily use air quotations because I don't think this is a skinwalker. Jake then asks if Sarah has ever used a handheld before, and giving her one, he tells her to go out back and lock the door as he heads upstairs to find the creature if it tries to get into one of the doors upstairs. This is some real Scooby-Doo type of nonsense. Let's split up, gang. So checking the rooms, Jake then checks all the doors to see if they are actually locked or not, as Sarah sits in the kitchen. Leonard then calls out, with Marie finding half of Henry. Guess he didn't have a leg to stand on when it came to fighting this creature. Life is pain. So intelligently, standing with her back to a weak point in the structure, of course that being a thin-ass window, Sarah then gets attacked by the creature as Jake breaks in before getting yeeted by the creature. Like one arm just thrown. Sarah, that was your opportunity to escape. You know when it let go of you? So seeing the creature is just around the corner, you think they could just hear this thing, but they actually have to visually spot it. As Leonard and Marie move around the outside, Hank then shows up and fires a shot into it, which does wound it. Unfortunately for everyone involved, his wounds heal up almost instantly, as then he runs off with Leonard giving chase. Following him back to the main street, there's some blood on the ground as then he pulls one revolver on Jake. He asks if Sarah is okay as she survived, as Leonard then reports he found a blood trail. Over with Black Deer and the Marshal, they sit at the fire to camp for the night as the Marshal says she was called a witch. But why? She talks about how if the beast is too strong, the beast is coming inside me. She turns into something that is half skinwalker, half human. A human walker, a skin human, a skooman. Anyways, Marshall keeps asking about this entire process, which Black Deer finds a little annoying, but she can no longer contain the beast inside. On all levels except physical, she is a wolf. Black Deer then stands up as she begins changing into the creature. He then says, "It's true," as her legs have changed as she shrieks and then turns on him. You know how horrifying that would be to have this woman in your camp and see her standing there like that? You're gonna crap your pants. She then says she's only a hybrid though, half human, half skinwalker, and because of this, she is friends to none. And this activates my almonds to the 10th degree. Like imagine you go out with your girlfriend or something and she starts talking like this and then you look at her and she just develops digitigrade structuring legs. I'll be like, oh shit. So then she starts wailing on him as he pulls the force multiplier and fires a few more shots off as then she runs away. Evidently, those were the silver bullets. So now that we have seen somewhat of a transformation, let's discuss it. I love it when a plan comes together. Starting with the feet, we see the first thing to have changed is the leg as that begins expanding, literally tearing the skin. This would mean the tarsal bones most definitely have increased in length, stretching the foot out, and again, tearing open the entire foot basically. The structure itself changes as now Black Deer stands on the balls of her feet, and as we move up the leg, it does have digitigrade structuring, meaning that these transformations very clearly favor a wolf-like transformation. Interestingly, it seems the dermal layers develop a massive amount of hair rapidly underneath the epidermis during this transformation. Just in the legs alone, the amount of bone growth would have to reactivate the epiphyseal plates or the growth plates of the long bones. And as we see with the claws that come out of her hands, it looks painful, but mitotic growth concerning the lacuna of the nails rapidly increases. Realistically, this level of cellular division would create so much heat that the body would literally cook itself, but these creatures are in fact somewhat supernatural, so they do not play by the standard rules of biology. This new bone growth all over the skeletal system would require the osteoblasts to basically be working triple overtime to harden any new bone growth. The level of calcium being applied into the bones would be so immense, it's more than you really have, but it would grow the body rapidly because again, there's a supernatural aspect at play here. The torso remains largely human-like, however, much like how the legs have grown, the humerus of the arms, which is, basically underneath the biceps and triceps, have their growth plates reactivated as well, which has increased their length. The radius and ulnar bone, which is in your forearm, have already increased in size, and we can also assume the carpal bones have lengthened along with the phalanges. We've already talked about the claw growth, but as we see her face, man, that is only a face a hybrid werewolf skinwalker mother could love now. The maxilla of the face has jutted out further to kind of accommodate the rapid growth of the canines, which are now roughly about 1.5 inches in length. Her other teeth have become jagged as well, and her face clearly shows signs of becoming more skeletal in appearance, indicating that the bones of the skull are showing signs of growth. However, she is only a hybrid, and because of this, her face lacks the hair and the full maxilla growth that we will see later. So being attacked by Black Deer, Marshall craps his pants as then she comes to mid-attack and yells the Marshal's name before getting a grip back on her humanity and running off into the woods, leaving the Marshal with one silver bullet left. Good thing he wore the brown pants. Back in the City of Dreams, Jake then asks if Leonard always has been on the right side of the law, and if any cop ever asks you that ever, you say, of course I have. He then says, I've done what it's taken to survive, but I'm mostly innocent. Back in the saloon, Hank is tied up with most definitely a progressing infection, as he says it's probably broken. Nobody cares, Hank. Hank then says he saved Sarah's life. But yeah, if you missed it, I know I said it earlier, but he took a shot at the werewolf, and he says because of that, she basically owes him. But she says not to talk about how he saved her life. He says he sees right through her to the bones. Hank then talks about how he's been places and how innocent women don't know how to handle a knife or cut a man's throat. But one that's been around might. So she spills the spaghetti out of her pocket about not being a virgin, and I mean, why not just tell him he's wrong? Who cares what this douche canoe has to say about anything? Marie then comes in asking if Hank is annoying them as Leonard then walks over and grabs his stuff. Hank says to set him free, and if he does, he will split the money with Leonard 50-50. Leonard really isn't interested in it, and hearing the horses neigh, they head out to see that they have all taken off. Not an ideal situation. Something has spooked the horses. Hank keeps spitting as Leonard then asks if they got any more light. Sun's getting real low. Actually, it's already set. It's the lowest it's ever been. Hank then yells to Leonard about how he's gonna die if he goes out there, as Jake then heads out with them, not knowing that they both have plot armor. Moving towards the library, Jake asks what their chances are, as Leonard then says if they can survive till morning, they can get out. Otherwise, it's not good. So basically, as long as we live, we don't die and we'll survive. I like those odds. Sounds like a 50-50 to me. Hearing more howling, they then keep moving, as then they light another lantern. Handing Jake the book, he says he can't get a handle on Leonard and who he even is. My thinking, Old West hunter tracking down monsters. Badass. So back in the library, they relax, which seems like a dumb idea given the blood trail leads directly to the library, and then lighting all the lanterns, Jake walks back further as they find a mule. Jake looks around the corner and then spots the creature as it attacks Jake. Leonard then fires a few rounds into it as Leonard then stabs it with a pitchfork. Baller! And before we get much further, what in the name of all that is holy is that? We will talk about its morphological traits here in a moment, so don't you worry your pretty striped head. Marie then calls out as it turns around and they light it up. Literally, with fire. Sarah then hugs Jake as they kiss. Man, breath must have been horrific back then, and they're just breathing it in because they are really close. And heading back to the saloon, they have survived their encounter with the creature, as Hank says he's surprised to see all of them in one piece. Cleaning Jake's wounds, Leonard then says he will take first watch, as Hank says it's probably going to be a long night. Standing on the balcony out front, that thing can get onto the roof, which means it could totally climb up there all the way to you without you even noticing, as Leonard then asks why Jake brought Sarah here in the first place. I mean, it's not really that great of a place. It's the Old West. Essentially, she wanted a fresh start and he was starting a new job. Basically, she didn't want her OnlyFans career following her, except back then it was Saloony fans. Wow, horrible. Never let me make a joke again. Jake then says the creature is coming in for the kill as they hear it growling literally from every direction, which is no small feat, unless it's running around them. Jake tells Sarah to go hide, but both Marie and Sarah are like, nah, we want to fight. Leonard then asks, also Marie fighting? She's not really fighting. Leonard asks if the silver, she fights herself. Leonard asks if the silver Marie has is genuine or not, as then they start loading them into shells. Hank then says if that works, he will eat his own head, and if not, don't worry, something will be arriving shortly to eat your own head regardless. Realizing that they are not just gonna have to wait there for this thing to show up because they don't want to kind of have it, sashay in on its own accord, they come up with a fantastic plan that couldn't possibly fail. Pushing Hank outside as bait, he says, "You're sick. Brother, I do believe that might be you. You've murdered a bunch of people and you took them hostage. What do you think they were gonna do? Didn't you also get done just taking out a preacher?" Forcing him to march out into the mud and into the street, they wait for the creature to come out. As Hank looks around, the creature is circling him, and it appears from the side before knocking him down into the mud. And that's it for Hank. If I recall correctly, he does not get back up. I think his throat must have gotten sliced or something. Leonard's rifle then jams, as Jake then fires 2 shots at the creature, but hilariously, I think they meant to fire more in the movie, but his revolver may have jammed or something like IRL. Entering the saloon, the creature is freaking massive. It approaches Marie, as Sarah just gets totally yeeted. Marie then gets grabbed and chooses to take herself out, as Sarah then laughs for some reason. Sister, what? So getting a good look at the creature, let's start with its general morphology. I'm sorry, that whole thing with Sarah was bizarre. Anyways, we're gonna talk about its morphology before moving on to its internal mechanisms by which it survives. When it grabs Marie, the average woman for the time period was around 5'1" to about 5'3" in the Lord's units, or 154.94 to 160.02 centimeters in heathen units. If we look at where she is height-wise to this creature, she's probably about mid-abdominal level, and this means she is roughly about 2/3 of the creature's height. So let's say she was on the taller end at 5'3", that's about 63 inches, which means half of her is needed to basically be about the height of the creature, which means if the math, or at least my math, doesn't completely suck, this puts the creature at around 94.5 inches, or around 7'10", probably closer to the 8-foot tall mark, or roughly about 238.76 centimeters. That is taller than Master Chief in his full Mjolnir armor, which would be absolutely horrifying. Looking at that, it's no wonder that Marie was like, screw this, I'm out. So as we also look at this behemoth of the creature, we can start to see that its body is also fairly large concerning muscle. All the same changes must apply from Black Deer being just a hybrid, but but now this creature is fully Skinwalker or werewolf. It's a werewolf for all intents and purposes. We can all see that. But they call it a Skinwalker, so that's what I'm gonna go with. There are a few differences given that this is a Navajo who went full sorcerer on themselves. The face is the most glaring of its alterations. When we see this creature more clearly, as we can tell, it's not a hybrid, and it didn't really do the Navajo thing, which is like becoming like a wolf or a fox or some other form of animal. At least that's my understanding, is they literally turn into the animal. This is once again kind of a combination between a wolf and a human. There's a word for this. Looking at the face, the maxilla is jutted outwards, implying more skull growth than what was seen in black deer. The mouth is much larger, and the canines, along with all the teeth, have become more cone-shaped. The eyes are still forward-facing and yellow, and the ears have become pointed like a werewolf's as well. The hair is quite wiry, but what's going on concerning its changes that we see from human into this creature is fairly interesting. Internally, several things have happened. Due to the skull shape changing, this would alter functions of the brain. I can't help but notice typically with werewolves, the frontal lobe area becomes more sloped back, indicating that there is likely pressure in the frontal lobe region, which has disrupted its function. Higher thought as a result will become more hindered, which is to be expected, and along with this, memory recall is likely wiped out as a result as well, which was interesting to see with black deer because she still had a similar skull structure, which means her frontal lobe was not dealing with the same amount of pressures that a full-blown Skinwalker's frontal lobe would be dealing with. So aggression levels have likely increased to the state that they have become because you have put so much physical mass on this quickly, and I mean, concerning muscle and everything, and to do so, the endocrine system would have to be ramped up to levels that are far beyond what this system is even supposed to naturally handle. Like the original WWF back in the day, none of this is natural. Human growth hormone levels would have to be maxed out for what the pituitary gland could even produce. This would likely suggest that the pituitary gland has also experienced the same rapid growth as many other areas of the body. Along with this, the testes would be absolutely dumping testosterone into the body to accompany the muscle mass. This lack of higher thought and emotional control accompanied with test levels that are likely in the 5-figure range would make this creature incredibly aggressive, but along with this, because of the growth, it would also basically be entirely starving the whole time. As a result, anything it comes across would be sustenance for it and would be absolutely shredded. Unfortunately, that also qualifies humans. Now, one of the things we see quite clearly is wound healing. Healing like Wolverine does obviously implies there are supernatural forces at work here, but given the mitotic abilities that black deer has, this wound healing seems to be how every cell in the body works. Rapid growing and allowing for the body to exist as is, there are only a few things that can actually put these down, as standard lead does not appear to do the trick. It really just injures this creature. So the first concerning things that can put down, an actual Skinwalker is said to be white ash. White ash is a type of tree that is considered sacred across many mythos. Norse mythology, for instance, called the trees the tree of life or the world tree. The branches would reach up into heaven and its roots into the underworld. In Britain, druids would actually use the ash tree and held it in high regard and created wands out of them, Harry Potter style, freaking nerds. In Hinduism, the tree is used in rituals to protect them on a spiritual level, but for the most part, ash trees are associated with healing, wisdom, and protection. Given that the transformation into a Skinwalker is rather painful, I would have to think that this is more of an affliction on the body due to a person meddling in something that they probably shouldn't be. And due to this, by exposing them to white ash, the creature is fundamentally healed because the person is healed. Once that happens, the injuries sustained from being exposed are actually lethal to a human. So it's important to understand countering supernatural with the supernatural. The other idea on how to put these things down is with silver, and this is unmistakably coming from How to Kill a Freaking Werewolf, but if you use a silver bullet, you can most definitely put them down. I believe it was in my Dog Soldiers video, I talk about it way more in depth, but the reason for it is that silver in a nanoparticle state can actually disrupt cellular division in a werewolf. This is done by interfering with the cell structure itself and DNA, leading to either cell death immediately or abnormal cell division, allowing for injuries to persist because mitotic cell division is disrupted. So this implies something rather interesting. Skinwalkers and werewolves in this case need to heal, which is how they're able to survive what they kind of are able to survive, but incurring enough damage, they cannot heal from it and bleed out like any other animal would. Because of this, I suggest there is a third way to kill a Skinwalker. and it is the humble wood chipper. While the body can heal, it would be too much damage too quickly, which would utterly mince the creature, thus preventing it from properly healing, leading to its wounds to end it on the spot. Now, having a wood chipper on hand in the Old West might be a bit of a task and probably not possible, but now you know. Go out and buy your wood chipper today. So back to the movie. Sarah then starts getting dragged off as Jake is knocked out, and so is Leonard. Prior to getting totally got, the marshal then arrives with the horses running over the werewolf. Well, I suppose that's pretty effective. I guess it's sort of like a biological wood chipper. The marshal then gets more silver as they see the werewolf is gone. Jake then wakes up and asks how Leonard is, as the marshal thought he was dead. Having been sliced across the head, he then gets his super shotgun back as he asks where Marie is. Seeing as she took the easier of two options, both pretty terrible, they now walk down the street to hunt this thing. Spotting it almost immediately, it's basically Bigfoot with big teeth. Leonard then fires a shot at it, telling it to return to hell, as they drop white ash on it, which turns it back into some hairy dude. The Navajos had typically a median height of around 5'8" or so, to like to grow 8 feet tall at least. You're talking about the most painful growing pains of your life if you're under a blood moon. So the marshal and Leonard then shake hands as Leonard informs the marshal both the Norton brothers are dead. Leonard declines the money as they ask where Leonard's even going to go. He can make $20 a month as a deputy. He says he has a job lined up in Santa Clara. He says a red-eyed demon is down there causing problems. So again, evidently this is his job. Jake again asks where he's from as he says, "Well, I tell you, but you've never heard of it." As Leonard then looks up with the blood moon overhead, they hear more howling as Black Deer is by some trees. As she hides, a creature is near her as she's no longer turned. Might be a good idea to turn if you can. As an enemy to both human and werewolf, it seems that she has no friends out here and could be eaten. Thus concludes Blood Moon. This creature is very clearly supposed to be a skinwalker, right? But I think you kind of get the point. This was more of a supernatural aspect concerning how it's able to grow as fast as it does and what it takes to take it out, I guess. Though a mundane weapon, such as, again, the humble wood chipper, works just as well. All in all, though, you could probably use a nuclear reactor too. I would have to say, this much growth, this fast, would most definitely cook the meat suit of anybody experiencing it. So good luck with that. But anyhow, I want to hear what you guys think. What do you believe this to be, or did the Navajo always talk about werewolf-like creatures? They just called it something different. I'm fairly certain they didn't, though. Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed, then leaving a like would be great of you, as it helps get the video out there, and subscribing is absolutely baller. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Games link in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our astronauts, Army and Tristan Kessick. Thank you guys for your awesome support. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer, and Feather. Thank you guys as well. And to my scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System Official Texan Stutz, and the victorious return of Chad the Enjoyer of Scientific Explanations of B-grade horror movies. I do appreciate y'all's support as well. And the rest of my patrons, you guys are absolutely awesome. It keeps everything running around here smoothly. It's greatly appreciated, so thank you. But all right, that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.